Hi guys! Welcome to JP Academia. So sa video na to, Taglish tayo, Tagalog-English, sa pag-solve ng vectors specifically. And ito yung unang episode nga natin ng solve natin yan for physics. And we have the outline or this outline para sa problem solving video na to. So may mga problems ako rito for components of a vector. May dalawa akong problem dyan, 1 and 2. Vector addition for 2 vectors. Then may problem din ako for vector addition for more than 2 vectors. Then of course, meron din tayo ditong problems for unit vectors, important sa pag-analyze ng components. Then we have scalar product and vector product, yung last two problem solving natin. So let's start. Okay, so magsimula tayo sa first problem natin. Under vectors, so we have this problem of find the x and the y components of a 50 meters displacement at an angle of 200 degrees. So tandaan natin na kapag sinabing displacement, this is a vector quantity na importante yung magnitude and direction kasi nga vector to, 50 meters displacement. And binigyan din tayo ng angle which is 200 degrees. I-assume natin na this is relative sa horizontal or sa positive x-axis natin. Ngayon, sa pag-solve ng ganitong problem, one way to start solving this is to illustrate muna yung problem para lang mas mahimay natin, mas ma-imagine natin kung ano bang nangyayari dito sa problem na to. So we have here this angle na 200. So naputol siya. Ayan, 200 degrees. Relative sa positive x-axis, we have this vector na color red. Then, itong green na to, ayan, we have the following components. So, we have here the x component, which refers to this one, yung horizontal shadow ng ating red na vector. So, ito yun, x component. Then, we have the y component naman, which is yung shadow ng vector mo or along the y axis. So, ito yun. Then, may angle tayo, of course, 200 degrees. Then, makakuha tayo ng 20 degrees dito relative sa negative x-axis. So, given na 180 lang to, tapos, syempre, plus 20, then you have 200 degrees. So, after nyan, we have the following quantities na binigay sa problem na to. So we have the magnitude ng vector, 50 meters. Then of course, we have the angle, which is 200 degrees. Ngayon, given itong dalawa, ang pwede natin gawin is to use to get the components muna or the component along the x. So that's the horizontal component. So para makuha yun, multiply mo lang yung magnitude, which is this one, 50 meters times cosine 200. Isang possibility yun. Para makuha mo yung a sub x, which is the x component, then makakuha ka na negative 47 meters. Pero pwede mo rin gamitin tong 20 degrees dito. Pero tandaan mo lang na kapag yan ang ginamit mo, na ang ating x component is negative. Kasi nasa ano ka third quadrant ka. Ito yun, ito yung x component mo. Kaya magiging negative 50 meters to times cosine 20. Therefore, you have negative 47 meters. Ngayon, to get the y component, same method lang, but this time, yung sign na gagamitin natin to get this vertical component ng ating vector. So, pwede natin gamitin yung sign 200, yung 200 degrees. Then, makakuha tayo ng negative 17.1 meters, mga approximately around that number. Then, yung e sub y natin, using naman yung method natin na ang angle na ginamit natin ay yung negative or yung 20 degrees. So, tandaan lang natin na yung y component dito ay negative din kasi nasa third quadrant ka nga. So, both the x and the y components are negative and therefore, makakuha ka na negative 17.1 meters. Okay, so we have this second problem naman. So, still nasa components pa rin tayo ng vectors. So, find the x and y components of vector B shown below. Mamaya papakita ko. The magnitude of the vector is 550 meters. And the angle phi, so the angle na binigay is equal to 25 degrees. So, tingnan natin. So we have this rotated Cartesian plane, pero tandaan na natin na ito lang yung positive x and positive y for our case. Then ito yung pinaka-vector natin sa problem na to, itong red. Then tandaan natin na yung angle phi rito ay binigay relative sa positive y axis. Hindi siya doon sa horizontal or sa positive x natin, unlike yung previous problem natin kanina. Ngayon, kapag ganyan yung case, same pa rin naman, pero tandaan lang natin na iba na yung position ng angle na binigay. So, nandito siya, phi. So, kapag ganitong problem, so this refers pa rin naman to your x component, yung along the x-axis, then yung along the vertical or b sub y, that refers to the y component of your vector b. Now, for this case, given na yung x and y axis natin ay right angle naman, so therefore, we can get theta, which refers to the angle relative to the positive x-axis, para same formula pa rin yung gagamitin natin na ginamit natin previously. So, para mag-work pa rin yun, kunin natin yung theta. So, theta is equal to 90 minus phi. So, yung binigay dito, which is relative to your positive y axis. And therefore, we have here 65 degrees. So, ito na yung angle theta natin relative to the positive x-axis. Now, pagkakuha mo nito, pwede mo na kunin yung b sub x mo or yung x component and yung y component ng vectors mo. So, for the x component, yung magnitude ng bilang na binigay naman, so we have 500 or 5.50 meters times cosine 65. Then we have this value of 2.32 meters for the x component. For the y component, same lang, but this time sine. Tandaan natin yung trigonometry natin. So sine yan kasi opposite, diba, over hypotenuse, yun yung sine theta. So yun lang yun. So yung opposite na yun, that refers to your b sub y or yung y component mo. And therefore, substitute mo lang yung given na values, makukuha mo yung 4.98 meters. So madali lang naman. So ganun kumuha ng components kapag ganito yung case. Okay. So for the third problem, guys, we have vector addition given these two vectors. So ito yung problem. Find the vector r given that A has a magnitude of 8, inclined 30 degrees above the positive x-axis. So may positive x tayo, 30 degrees doon. We have your A na itong color red na naka-drawing dito sa left natin. And letter B or the vector B here has a has magnitude of 4. So walang units, so something units. And this is inclined 60 degrees above the x-axis. Ngayon, simple lang siya, dalawang vectors na binigay. So we have vector A, vector B. Ang pwede natin gawin dito is to get muna yung mga components ng vectors natin. So for vector A, we have A sub x, itong shadow niya along the horizontal. Then we have A sub y, shadow niya along the vertical. For vector B, ganun din. Yung component niya along the horizontal or B sub x. Then yung component niya along the vertical, which is your B sub y. Then makukuha natin yung resultant vector or yung addition nila, which is r. So first, find the x and y components of A and B vector. So madali lang yan. Nagawa na natin kanina. So dapat kayang-kaya na natin to. And we have the following components. So we have the A sub x muna, which is yung magnitude lang naman ng A vector times cosine theta. So yung theta A dito, this is relative to your positive x-axis. Ganun din naman sa letter or sa vector B. Yung theta rito, this refers to the angle relative to your horizontal or positive x-axis. So we have the following. Straightforward naman yan. So A sub x, B sub x, which is 2. Walang units. A sub y, 4. Then B sub y, 3.46. Ngayon, given na may components ka na along the horizontal, along the vertical, what you need to do to get the components of your resultant vector or yung addition ng dalawang vectors na to is to add up. So, kukunin mo yung sum ng x components and y components ng dalawang vector na to. So, yun. So, for r sub x, ito yung x component ni resultant vector. We have 8.93 na magnitude. Then, for r sub y, so ito yung vertical or y component ng resultant vector, we have 7.46. Ngayon, pag nakuha mo na yan, we can easily get the magnitude of your resultant vector r. Based lang to sa Pythagorean theorem. So we have square root of r sub x squared plus r sub y squared. Yung sagot na to, so this is equal to 11.64. So magnitude pa lang yan. Kailangan mo ng theta for the direction of your resultant. So to get that, tangent inverse lang siya ng r sub y over r sub x. So itong dalawang components ng resultant vector natin, and makakuha ka ng about 39, oops, nawala. Makakuha ka na ng about 39.9 degrees. So that's it. Okay, so yung next problem natin, ito yung vector addition na more than 2 vectors. So may 3 vectors tayong given dito. So we have this Cartesian plane and we have the following vectors. So meron tayong dito 9 newtons. So forces to. Then we have 6 newtons na may 45 degrees along the negative x-axis. Then we have the third vector, 12 newtons na nandito sa ating negative y-axis. Ngayon, same method lang ng pag-a-add ng 2 vectors kanina. Ang unang step dito, of course, after mo i-drawing para lang ma-imagine mo kung ano nangyayari sa problem, is to get the components of your vector. So, hanapin mo yung x and y components na mga to, given na 2D problem lang naman to. So, for example, for the first vector, 9 newtons, this is purely along the horizontal or along your positive x axis. Therefore, purely x component lang din yan. Diba? Kung nalala nyo kanina, that's the magnitude. So, 9 newtons, cosine 0. Kasi parallel lang naman siya sa positive x-axis natin. Therefore, 9 newtons lang din yung x component niya. Kasi cosine 0 yon, which is 1. Then, we have here the y component, which is 0 newtons. Yung reason dyan, kasi sine 0 is 0 lang. And sabi ko nga kanina, purely along the horizontal lang to, and therefore, wala talaga siyang y component. So, yung next dito, we have here 6 newtons, yung color blue, na may 45 degrees na angle along the negative x direction. Ngayon, makikita natin sa shadow na ikakas niya along the horizontal and along the vertical. So, for the horizontal, nasa negative x-axis kasi yung component nito. Kaya na-expect natin yung x-component nito ay negative din. Then, for the positive or for the y component naman ng second vector natin, this is along the positive y axis or positive y direction. And therefore, positive yung y component nito. So, pwede natin gawin, negative 6 newtons times cosine 45. So, negative kasi nga, nasa negative x-axis ka. So, this is equal to negative 4.24 newtons. Tapos, sa y component niya, ganun din naman, same method. Pero tandaan natin na sabi ko kanina, positive yung y component nito. And therefore, we have 4.24 newtons. Okay. Next, we have the third vector, 12 newtons. This is purely along the vertical kasi nga nasa y-axis siya or negative y-axis siya. So therefore, wala talagang x component to. This is 0 for the x component. Then, for the y component, negative 12 newtons kasi nga nasa negative y direction ka. Or pwede mong gawin 12 times sine 270. So, makakuha ka lang din dyan ng negative 1. And therefore, you have negative 12.0 newtons. Same lang sa ginawa natin kanina for 2 vectors. Add mo lang yung components along the x, then along the y. Makakuha ka ng components ng resultant vector mo. so r sub x, which is equal to 4.76 newtons. For r sub y, yung y component ng ating resultant, this is equal to negative 7.76 newtons. Pagkakuha mo ng components ng resultant vector mo, pwede mo na kunin yung magnitude ng resultant vector r mo. So gamit ang tong formula na to, which is based lang sa Pythagorean theorem. So you have 9.10 newtons for the magnitude. For the phi, we have here negative 58.5 degrees, or kung gusto mo makuha yung relative doon sa positive x axis, tapos you have here clockwise na direction, yung pag ganun. Kasi itong negative 58.5, ito yung angle phi na pababa. So somewhere nandito ang ating resultant vector. So itong 301.5, ito yung theta relative sa positive x axis mo. So pag umikot ka ng counterclockwise, that's 301.5 degrees. And yun for this problem. Okay, so next problem natin ay for unit vectors. So binigyan tayo ng dalawang displacements. So dalawang vectors to. So una, vector A na may x, y, and z components. So I hat, j hat, k hat, naka-meters. Then we have the second displacement, B or vector B, na ganun din, may x, y, and z component na naka-meters din. So sabi dito, find the magnitude of the displacement 2. So may scalar quantity tayo rito, 2 times the vector A minus vector B. So paano to? Kapag mag-add ka or mag-subtract ka ng vector, ano lang yan? Ina-add mo lang talaga at sinusubtract mo lang yung bawat component. So I hat to I hat, or yung x components, j hat to j hat, or yung y components, then k hat to k hat for the z components. Sa pag-multiply naman ng scalar quantity such as this, may 2 tayo rito, 2 times a. Ganun lang din, multiply mo lang yung components ng vector a mo ng 2. So magiging twice yung magnitude ng bawat components ng vector na yan. So sige, simulan natin. So dito, ganyan. So sinulat ko na ng vector C yung sagot ng operation na to. So vector C is equal to 2 times your vector A, which is this one, minus your vector B. So ang pwede natin gawin, i-distribute muna natin to si 2 sa bawat components ng vector na to para lang mas madali. Then you have, of course, 16 to. Ito, positive 10. So ito na siya. Then you have your negative 4. So ito na siya for the k hat. Then pag samasamahin lang natin, i-group natin yung bawat components ni A and B. So we have 16 minus 6 I hat, quantity 10 plus 7 j hat, plus this quantity negative 4 minus 8 k hat, or yung z component natin. Ngayon, after yan, madali na lang to, straightforward. Add mo sila or subtract mo, then you have 10 I hat plus 17 j hat minus 12 k hat. And ito yung pinaka-vector C natin for this case. Ito yung displacement. Yung sagot nitong operation na to. Ngayon, pagkakuha mo niyan, kailangan natin ng magnitude yun ang hinahanap. So for this case, same method lang ng kanina, gagamit ka lang ng Pythagorean formula natin. Square mo lang yung bawat components, then you will get about 23.1 meters. Okay? So ganun lang sa pag-solve ng unit vectors. Problems related to unit vectors. Okay, so next problem ay scalar product, and this is popular sa pag-solve natin later ng work. So, yung mga work related problems. So, sabi dito, find the scalar product of vector A and B, or A dot B. So, may dalawa tayong vectors. The magnitude of the vectors are A is equal to 3 and B is equal to 8. So, binigyan tayo ng magnitude. Ngayon, let's say ito yung dalawang vectors na yan. So, vector A and vector B, yung green na yan. Then, we have here, pinakita rito, na relative to your positive x-axis, we have 53 degrees as the angle of vector A. Then, for vector B naman, relative sa positive x-axis, we have positive 130 degrees. Pero tandaan natin na sa formula kasi ni scalar product, ang kailangan mo yung angle between these two vectors. So, para malaman mo yun, madali lang, subtract mo lang si 130 minus 53 to get the angle between these two vectors, which is 77 degrees. Pagkakuha mo niyan, balikan mo lang yung definition ng scalar product natin. So, we have this one, yung magnitude ni A times magnitude ni B, cosine phi. So you have 3 times 8, yung magnitude nila, binigay. Then we have cosine 77, yung angle between these two vectors. Then you will get 5.40 na value ng scalar product mo. Okay? So second method na pwede mong gawin, let's say wala lang, ayaw mong gamitin yung definition na ito, yung binigay sa taas. Ang pwede mong gawin is first to get the components of the vectors. So we have here the x component ni A, y component ni A, given yung angle nila relative to the positive x direction. Then same thing with your vector B, kunin mo yung components niya, so along the x, along the y, and you have these values. Pagkakuha mo niyan, gamitin mo tong formula na to. A dot B is equal to A sub x, B sub x. So, minumultiply mo lang yung x components nila plus A sub y, B sub y. Multiply mo lang yung y components. Then, plus A z, B z. Multiply mo yung z components. Pero for this case, 2D lang to na x, y. So, wala tayong z components. And therefore, you will get the same answer which is 5.40. Okay? So, nawala. Okay. So, ayan. So, 5.40 yung sagot natin. Okay. So, for the last problem, this is about vector product. And ito yung problem natin. So, vector A has a magnitude of 4 units along the positive x-axis. So, sabihin natin may 3D tayo dito. So, x-axis, y-axis, then we have here the z-axis. Then, vector B has magnitude of 6 units that lies in the xy plane with 30 degrees angle relative to your positive x-axis. So find the vector products, which is this one. So vector C is equal to A cross B. So cross product siya and therefore vector pa rin yung final answer niya, of course. And ito, pinapakita ngayon dito yung mga vectors na yan. So this is your vector A na along the positive x-axis. We have your vector B here na 6 units yung magnitude niya, then 30 degrees relative sa positive x. Then we have here your letter C. Base lang to sa right-hand rule. Ikot mo yung daliri mo. Tapat mo muna sa A. Then ikot siya, ano ba to? Counterclockwise, papunta sa B. Then you will get your vector C na papunta rito sa positive z direction. Ngayon, paano to? So pwede natin gamitin yung definition muna ng magnitude ng cross product na to for two vectors. So given yung magnitude ni A, magnitude ni B, multiply mo lang. So 6 times 4 lang yan. Then you have sine phi. So we have here 30 degrees. And you will get 12 units as your answer. Pero tandaan mo na magnitude lang to ng cross product. So, based sa right-hand rule, para malaman mo yung direction, sabi ko na kanina, i-curl mo lang yung kamay mo from A papunta sa B, counterclockwise, then papunta yan sa positive Z direction, and therefore, that vector C is equal to 12 k hat. So, along the positive Z axis yan. So, second method dito, ay yung pagkuha mo na ng components, this is very similar lang sa ginawa natin kanina for the scalar product. So kunin mo si A sub x, B sub x, A sub y, B sub y, then A sub z, B sub z, which is 0 lang naman kasi si vector A and B ay nasa xy plane mo lang. Okay? So given these values, pwede mo gamitin itong formula na to get the components for C sub x, C sub y, and C sub z. Then, kung medyo marunong ka kumuha ng determinant, may definition din to based sa linear algebra. Then you will get the same magnitude which is 12 units along the z. So c sub z is equal to 12 units. And therefore, yung vector c mo is equal lang din sa 12 k hat. Okay? So, yun lang. So, that's it for this lecture video. And sa uulitin, magkita ulit tayo sa susunod na episode ng Solve Natin Yan.